Hey, what's up with you guys? Hey, welcome back to another video. Now, this is going to be my top 3 tips for leveling and basically prepping for launch of TBC. These are things that I'm going to be doing and things that I thought would be helpful to some of you guys if you guys are really trying to, hustle and be organized for TBC launch and really hit the ground running. These are things I'm doing to get ready for it, and hopefully you guys find these helpful as well. So first, let's go through number 1. That is bank alts. Now, this is something I did for the first time on Classic launch, which I had not done this before in previous expansions, but after doing it in Classic launch, I am going to be doing this anytime there's new content like this, new re-releases and things like that, because it ends up being just exponentially helpful to organizing and just the speed in which you're leveling and kind of, compartmentalizing different things while you're playing the game and allowing you to really focus on leveling and enjoy the leveling the first time through and not have to worry about your bags always being full and all these other issues. So bank alts are a big one. I highly recommend having 4 or 5 of these bank alts set up, whether that means you end up having to have another account. Like me, I have my character creation list is full on my main account. But point being, having even one is going to be very, very helpful. Getting them bags and stuff before the actual launch occurs, sending them only 1 gold. They don't need to have a ton of gold on them, but enough gold to be able to be mailing stuff back and forth is really huge. Now, the reason bank alts are so huge, especially for Horde side, I'll have this video playing in the background. You can create a bank alt and get them to a mailbox and a bank in an inn almost instantly. It takes like 2 minutes, I think, to run there. It's very, very fast for Horde. I don't think there's something as quick for Alliance, but I know that there's some ways you can get like humans over to Stormwind pretty quick, stuff like that. But anyway, this is the setup that I've been doing. Is all of my bank alts are all trolls, and you can just run them over to Ratchet real quick, and it takes no time at all. Now, I personally am going to have alts set up for things like cloth, rare items, herbs, uncommon items, and those are all going to be separate alts so that I can kind of compartmentalize what pieces I'm sending to what tunes. And this might sound like a little bit kind of like OCD, but it ends up actually being a really good way to compartmentalize your items and make sure that you don't have a bunch of stuff commingled and just be kind of organized without having to spend hardly any effort at all. The other thing that's really great about having these bank alts set up is that you can return, is the verbiage that in-game uses, return the mail that will go instantly back to whatever character it came from. So for example, if I send a full mail stack of cloth to my cloth alt from my main, and then I don't open that mail for 4, 5, 6 days, however long it takes to level up, then I want to send that cloth back to my main to go ahead and start leveling tailoring. All I have to do is log on that cloth alt and just hit return, and it instantly will go back to my main and be sitting in his mail for 30 days. This is a really good system to be able to utilize the mail as if it's basically extra bag space. You do have to keep in mind this is a 30-day window, so as long as you're staying on these relatively frequently and you check on them every couple weeks to make sure you don't have anything that you left in the mail, there's no harm in doing this at all, and it helps just a lot with freeing up your bag space, allowing you to focus on items you're using while leveling, things that you need for quests and all that fun stuff, and allowing the mail to function as like a pseudo bank bag type situation and help keep your stuff organized. Now, the last thing on this is I do recommend naming these characters pretty obvious names so that you don't get confused with what they are. Having it be like your character's name with 1 letter difference gets really confusing because you end up accidentally mailing stuff to the wrong person. So make it something really obvious like wooey cloth or wooey herbs or some kind of like obvious verbiage that is going to be very easy for you to discern which alt is responsible for which items. Now, tip number 2, this is one that I haven't really seen before in any videos prior, but I am going to be stacking up the mats for the boot enchants to have with me, probably utilizing a similar system where I just mail them to myself before launch, because these mats are really inexpensive. You're talking about like 4 or 5 gold, something like that, probably in total for a boot enchant at the current time. And you're only going to be upgrading your boots like 3, maybe 4 times while you're leveling, but losing that movement speed over the course of leveling on your first upgrade is going to hurt. And you're more than likely going to have virtually your entire guild or your whole kind of squad leveling at the same time, and having enchanters out in the world and about is going to be a pretty regular thing. That's not going to be super hard when we're talking about the first time through it leveling. And keeping these mats accessible where you're not having to go to an auction house and buy the mats to do this is going to allow you to maintain having that speed buff on your boots when it's going to be the most impactful, arguably, in allowing you to get through these zones, dungeons, and quests 5, 6, 7% quicker. However much running is involved in all of this stuff, the boot enchant is going to be a pretty significant part when we're talking about the big picture and how much time you're actually spending running around. And you don't want to be losing that movement speed the first boot upgrade you get, which more than likely is going to be in Hellfire Peninsula. Now, the third tip that I have for you guys is to know how you're going to level your professions. I recommend looking up whatever professions you intend on going, understanding a leveling guide and what materials are needed so that you don't stockpile too many materials. Very, very likely that the first week of launch is going to be the most profitable for selling materials, as so many people are going to be trying to power level their professions initially. You can do things now by prepping and buying items that are classic items that are still going to give you, level credits into the first 20 or 30 levels of the profession. Keep in mind, max profession in TBC is 375, I believe, so you only have to get that 75 levels. So getting the first 30 levels from classic items that you can be buying and stocking up now is a really good idea. I've been doing this, for example, with engineering and things like the repair bots. You can go ahead and start getting those items together. Now, it's also important to understand things that are going to be changing, where there's going to be new patterns for 1 to 300 of those professions as well. For example, fused wiring is a pretty difficult mat to come by in Classic right now in general. Relatively expensive for being one piece of many of the repair bots that need to be crafted. However, there's a recipe coming out in TBC that's going to let us craft fused wiring, basically with getting copper bolts and essence of fire. Now, whether this is going to be a more efficient way of getting fused wiring is still going to be up in the air right now. Essence of Fire is pretty expensive on our server, so it's not, doesn't make any sense. But this is a good way to utilize extra mats that you might not be using for anything and be getting some value from not having to basically get outland mats for the first 30 levels of your profession. This is a pretty big deal in general with being able to level your profession quickly and early on and it not cost you thousands of gold. And it is going to require you to look up a little bit yourself, depending on what professions you're doing, because it's different across the board. Tailoring shouldn't be an issue because most people will be dungeon grinding and you're going to get a lot of cloth. And generally the first half of the levels of the profession, you can make like bolts of cloth and bags and you basically level it up. So I don't envision tailoring being a difficult one to level up initially. But things like engineering, blacksmithing, jewel crafting, for example, those are all going to be pretty difficult to level up. And I don't surmise a lot of people are going to be mining in the start. A lot of people, I think, have double crafting professions, and so paying retail price for those retail price for those mats is going to be pretty expensive, and I think you're going to want to be proactive in basically doing what you can to prep early on. What you can do is actually go on to Wowhead and it will show you the levels in which the professions actually will go, different rarities, basically how long you can keep leveling these up. And that's why the repair bot, I actually saw that from a Scotty J video. Repair bot is actually a really useful item for us to be crafting as engineers. I know a lot of you guys are engineers, and I think this is going to be an even bigger deal than I initially thought because of the changes potentially coming to drums. I think a lot of people are not going to be dropping engineering for leatherworking necessarily, depending on exactly what those changes end up being at the end of the day. So with that being said, this is how I'm prepping up, getting all my stuff stocked and ready, and trying to be, ready to hit the ground running with engineering as we're out doing quests and things like that. All the cloth I get, all the, uncommon items and things like that, be sending those to my various alts to help organize them. And then once we get level 70, I'll be able to go back onto those alts, send those items back onto my main and get all those auctions posted and all of that fun stuff as well. So with that being said, guys, those are my 3 biggest tips: bank alts, boot enchants, and know your professions so you can be ready come launch of TBC. Thanks so much for hanging out, guys. If you guys have any questions, like always, please leave them down in the questions below. If there's any big tips that you are going to be utilizing launching at TBC that I didn't mention, please let me know down below too, so that I can use those and try and expedite this leveling process. Super excited, guys. Hope you guys are too. Thanks so much for hanging out. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.